Washington, D.C. It's the last honest man in Washington. It's the Kuhner Show.
570 is the number. My friends, we are now joined by the senior staff reporter for WorldNet Daily, Jerome Corsi. Last week, he came out with a blockbuster story looking into Obama's Social Security numbers. And in fact, according to Mr. Corsi, he has now reporting that there are not one, but apparently, allegedly, two Social Security numbers that Obama has used or that are now registered in his name. This is a violation of the law, and in fact could be a major scandal and a fraud case. We are now joined by Mr. Corsi on the phone. Mr. Corsi, welcome back to the Jeff Kuhner Show.
Jeff, thank you. Great to be back with you.
Mr. Corsi, so, I read the story. I even talked about it last week on my show. It's a dynamite story for all of our listeners out there. What's the essential premise of the piece?
Well, the piece is there's two private investigators who have put affidavits into court cases, and they supplied me with the information. They searched the private investigator law enforcement databases, only available to private investigators, and identified that President Obama's Social Security number, the one he's currently using, that begins with 042, was issued to someone who applied for that Social Security number in Connecticut in 1977 to 1979. Now, the first two things wrong with that, these are years when President Obama was in high school, and he was not in Connecticut in those years. He was in Hawaii. In fact, there's no evidence in the released information about President Obama's background that he was ever in Connecticut in those years, nor was his family. President Obama's father was long gone from Harvard. He was in Harvard in 1962 to about 1965. By 1977, Barack Obama Sr. was back in Kenya. So, first of all, there's no reason President Obama would not have applied from Hawaii. Why is he applying from Connecticut to get a Social Security number? And secondly, the second major thing initially wrong with this is that President Obama began working in 1975 and 1976 in an ice cream shop in Hawaii, in Oahu.
That's right. As you pointed out, a Baskin-Robbins. So he had a Social Security number from working in Hawaii, correct?
He should have. If he was working following the rules and legally, you would think that he would apply in Hawaii for a Social Security number back to 75 so he could work in the ice cream shop. What is he doing showing up with a Social Security number that was issued in 1977 to someone applying from Connecticut?
So, in other words, it looks like President Obama has two Social Security numbers.
It does, and that's the private investigators further suspect that this may be a case of identity fraud. There's an anomaly with this Social Security number from Connecticut. It is not only issued in 1977-79, but it was associated with somebody who was born in 1890. Now, that doesn't mean President Obama's 120 years old. But what the private investigators suspect is that, let's say somebody born in 1890 gets to 1977 and decides they need a Social Security card for the first time, maybe for medical benefits. They apply and get a Social Security card in 1977. That person who's now 87 years old is going to die pretty soon. This makes this card a ideal card for identity theft, especially if the 87-year-old person does not apply for any Social Security death benefits, burial benefits, or any other records that would indicate the person died. So people looking to steal a Social Security number would look for a number that, let's say, had been legitimately issued by Social Security, but the person had been issued to is dead. There's no record of that person having died, because they didn't claim Social Security death benefits. The number's out there, and the first record the private investigators can find that President Obama began using this Social Security number issued from an application in Connecticut is 1986, when President Obama was working as a community organizer in Chicago. So there's a lot of things that don't fit together.
Now, Mr. Corsi, let me ask you this. Why would Obama commit, unless just for argument's sake, if there are two Social Security numbers, and he has one from Connecticut and another one from Hawaii, why would he be committing identity fraud?
Well, Jeff, I wish when I was at Harvard I took that course on mind reading or the psychic investigation course. I'm an investigative reporter. I can just tell you what the record shows. When I asked various experts, Robert Siciliano, a very well-known expert on identity theft, Siciliano said, look, this just demands an answer from the White House. Because you would think that someone, Barack Obama, born in Hawaii, working in Hawaii, would have just applied from Hawaii and gotten a Social Security card. Makes no sense that he shows up with a Social Security card issued after he began working to an applicant in Connecticut, where Barack Obama never lived and never had any family. It doesn't make sense. And while the private investigators were able to prove to me this was a number that Barack Obama was using, they had gone to the Selective Service database, which is on the internet, a little database finder. They had punched in this Social Security number, President Obama's name, and it generated President Obama's Selective Service draft number. So they were able to show me this and prove that it was in the Selective Service database, the draft database, a Social Security number, the 042 number that was associated with President Obama, as well as being associated in the law enforcement databases that the private investigators were authorized to search as showing up as a Social Security number, the 042 number that President Obama was using.
Now, this to me is just, it's just the mystery just continues to deepen and deepen. Is it not a crime to have two Social Security numbers?
Yes, again, there may be some selective instances when a person would have more than one Social Security number. Maybe there had been fraud with the number or some other unusual circumstances. But again, if there were two numbers, it would need an explanation as to why it happened, because normally it's a crime to have more than one Social Security number. It's fraud.
Why do you think the elite media, outside of people such as yourself, few lone brave voices like you, why is the elite media not covering and following this story?
Well, this has been the case with Barack Obama from the beginning. The mainstream media, the elite media, have done everything they can to circle the wagons, and I'm an investigative reporter. I'm used to being vilified, but certainly since I've written The Obama Nation, which is the book I wrote, was for a month a #1 New York Times bestseller in 2008 during the campaign, but still I'm vilified for people don't want anything negative researched about Barack Obama. If this had been George W. Bush and somebody found that he'd been using a Social Security number issued in a state where he'd never lived or had not applied from, it would have been top news in the New York Times.
Oh, every newspaper in the country would have been after that story.
Precisely, but because it's Barack Obama, and I continue to find the documentary evidence whenever I can get the few documents available on Barack Obama. And look, now Barack Obama, the government's even prosecuting a series of people in Iowa who were looking for medical records. It's not only that Barack Obama won't release records, but anybody who searches a database without precise authorization to search that database looking for records about Barack Obama is getting prosecuted.
We have been talking to Jerome Corsi, senior staff reporter for WorldNet Daily. Go to worldnetdaily.com to read all of his explosive articles. Mr. Corsi, thank you so much for coming on the Kuhner Show.
Thank you, Jeff. Great pleasure and honor to be back with you.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. We'll be right back, my friends, right after this break. You won't believe it, but nudism is now on the loose in London. Is America next? Is nudism the next frontier of American liberalism? Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break. Jeff Kuhner on 570 WTNE.